Hey everyone, this is Kevin KAL Kallaugher. I'm the editorial cartoonist for The Economist and the author of the Substack Cal Draws the Line. And I'm delighted to be here with you. Hold on, I'm just going to turn down the volume on my other machine so we don't have hear me talk twice in a row. But I'm here for a special live presentation, Substack Live, with my good buddy, cartoonist extraordinaire, and someone I'm really looking forward to introducing you to, and that's my friend Jack Ohman. Jack, welcome to Cal Draws the Line.
Great to see you as usual, my friend.
Yeah, so this is a great thing, Substack, I believe. Well, here we have a situation where, without editors, without big, organizations, media organizations that might show bias one way or another. Instead, we're independent journalists being able to speak our minds here and speak directly to audiences that want to hear it, particularly in this kind of poisonous time of acrimony that it's awfully hard to believe or understand what's going on out there. And one of the great things about Substack is that you hear it straight from the horse's mouth. And this has really been a delight for me to join. And we do have some other cartoonists, right, Jack, that have joined in the Substack world.
I saw some old friends pop up there, plus Neil Grauer, our mutual buddy. So yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to ask my subscribers to do two things when you come on board here. So the first is tell us where you are watching from, where you're viewing this Substack Live, and then also think about. You don't have to tell us straight away. Drop in the notes. What are your favorite Substacks? What would you like to share with some other people? Not just one, you can put in as many as you want in the comments, but also if anyone out there has got more than 20 Substacks that they support, just give us the number, how many you support, and we're going to see who's got the most, because I often see there's some people that got 30 or 40 Substacks that they follow, which is, of course, a big commitment because you are offering your email you're basically saying, give me 40 more emails a week or whatever, and maybe even more.
That's just
And
for me, yeah.
yeah, and so it's going to be. I'll be very curious how what people are thinking of. What they do as far as subscriptions and that sort of thing. Um, Now, you're also welcome, of course, to ask questions, and that's what one of the great things about the Substack lot is to have our subscribers have a chance to interact with me and my friends and my guests that are here. And please, no question is too silly. And one of the things that I was talking about with Jack before we came on is that when I'm doing these type of events, I always think, what would the 18-year-old Cal ask as a question of me or Jack or professionals like this, right? Given this opportunity. Partly because, as Jack and I know, it's hard. How many cartoonists are there in the world? There's not that many. And we have such a singular and interesting profession, and everyone comes into it in a different way, and everyone's got different approaches. And so there's so much to learn, and there's no school, right, Jack? There's no school for cartooning, really. We kind of learn it organically. And what I'm going to want to explore with you in our conversation, Jack, is how do cartoonists learn and what are they learning and that sort of thing. And it reminds me of this funny story, Jack, is that when I was 21, I lived in Connecticut, which is right next to New York City. And I lived in the county, which was called Fairfield County, which, as it happened, had the highest concentration of cartoonists of any place in the country. And a guy had actually written a book about this.
Which is a wonderful book.
Yeah. And the reason
Cartoon
was
County.
Cartoon County, because after World War II, when all the cartoonists who were working for the military magazines and publications came back, some of them settled there, and then the other guys came around to hang out with their buddies, and it was very convenient to go into New York City, where it was the capital of the publishing world in the U.S. at that time.
They
And
go to
so
their pitch meetings.
yes, they would bring bags of cartoons, right? And they'll get on the train. There's a train line that goes from Boston to New York, goes right down through Fairfield County. And they would go in several times a week, drop off cartoons with one group, then pick them up the next week and drop it off in another. And then they would come back and go to a bar near the train station. So, as it happened, Jack, I lived near Westport, Connecticut train station. I mean, I lived a couple miles from that. I was living in Norwalk, but it was right over the border, Westport train station. And it was one of the biggest, it had, maybe a couple dozen cartoonists lived in Westport, Connecticut. And I heard that the bar right next to the train station, when the cartoonists came back from New York, they'd go into the bar. So the day I turned 21, which was a legal drinking time, I thought,
My
I'm
God. Yep.
I'm gonna go down there and I'm gonna meet some cartoonists, right? Of
And
course,
there's
I
Mort
show up.
Walker. Yeah. Right.
First of all, I obviously didn't do my homework. I didn't know what trains they were on, what time they had come, what day maybe, and also the biggest mistake that I made was I showed up at this bar and I said, what does a cartoonist look like? I mean, they're not gonna be carrying pens and drawing all over the place. I think I lasted in there, for 7 minutes and then turned around, with my tail between my legs and so on. So anyways, again, it goes back to this thing that what questions would have asked them when I met them is precisely the sort of things that, we're happy to address here right now. So, just going through my list of things here. Well, I'm gonna, start with a question for our friend Jack. Well, first of all, I got to give a proper introduction to Jack, right? We had a bio that I posted, so many of the people may have read that coming into this. But Jack, you had worked, at Columbus Dispatch, Detroit Free Press, um, the Portland Oregonian, Sacramento Bee. You're doing work now for the San Francisco Chronicle. You are one of the, great cartoonists who have a long history. You're incredibly prolific cartoonist, won every award that you can ever imagine. But also what people don't know is that you're also a gifted writer. And you do editorials, you do columns, you write books. You have a fantastic knowledge that you then share with your audience. And so you make a massive contribution to the conversation in this country. And most people don't know what you look like. So, ladies and gentlemen, Jack Ohman.
It's great to be here. Cal. Cal and I have known each other for 35 years at least. And I remember the first time I saw Cal walking into the 1987 Washington, D.C. Editorial Cartoonist Convention, which was my first one. And Tom Flannery was still a cartoonist for the Baltimore Sun,
And
right?
I was still living in England.
And he was at that convention.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And boy, Cal came in looking like some, British character actor, with I don't think you had a cape, but you should have,
I didn't have a
but
pipe.
you didn't look American, right? It's like, who's
Right.
this guy, and then we have had a lifelong friendship, and we fly fish together and talk about fly fishing, and we, see each other at all these events. And so, you're just my beloved friend. So I'm really happy to be here.
Well, Jack, you talk about, this gathering that you met me at, the Association of American Editorial Cartoonists, which is a professional organization. It surprises people. We have a professional organization for cartoonists, but specifically for the political editorial cartoonists. And for a long time, that was a really vital organization. We would often have 300 people show up at our conventions. They would go on for 4 days. We would have top people come and address us. We would go to the White House, various different things like that. And it was really a wonderful thing. And both Jack and I have been president of that organization over time. Now, of course, it's as newspapers are failing, the natural home for political cartoonists is evaporating, and so it means that there's fewer and fewer of the traditional cartooning jobs that we've been used to. And right now, Jack, you're organizing our next gathering, which is in September in Sacramento. Is that right?
That's right. It's interesting. I've been president of the AAEC, is what it's called,
Mm,
twice. And the first time I was president was during Charlie Hebdo.
okay.
And so, mostly we were just navigating that and among other things. In fact, the convention, political or AAC convention, the next year when I was president after Hebdo, well, we had SWAT teams from the Columbus Police Department
Right.
on site,
I remember this. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
a lot of them, 8, 10 people, kind of moving around in flak jackets, and fast forward to the second time I was president, which was this existential moment for this organization because, editorial cartooning in daily newspapers on staff positions, Cal and I were, you know, victims of that uh, collapse. And, we had to figure out a way to keep our organization alive. And so I worked for several years trying to find various funding sources and supportive groups, and basically to no avail. I had a couple cards left, but not too many. And then Mark Murphy, our president now, came in, and Steve Broadner, who's just the absolute genius, political artist, and he he has managed, pending the approval of the group, to merge us with the Society of Illustrators in New York. And so we'll be voting on that at September, and that's going to give us a firm footing going forward. So, right? So we're still here.
Great. Great, great. Now you mentioned Steve Broadner. I've noticed someone put in the in our discussion that they support the Steve Broadner Substack, which is a brilliant one. So,
Absolutely.
well, Jack, you talked about that you were around when the Charlie Hebdo issue was circulating. And one of the things when you're president is not that you're just organizing a convention, a kind of a social gathering, but also you become the spokesperson for the industry, if that's the right word to say, or for at least for our collective group and our interests. And a lot of it revolves around freedom of speech because we are one of the greatest benefactors. We're right on the front line of freedom of speech, practice of being able to draw caricatures and criticize your own head of state. And in fact, I've always said that you can judge the maturity of a society by how much satire it can endure. And political cartoons are on the front end of satire because you're taking the face, the most valuable possession of a leader or a power broker, and you're taking it apart and putting it back together under your control. And so you have this kind of the political cartoonists have this kind of unique role, and that's why we have our own special gathering of cartoonists because it is kind of unique. So, but today you had Charlie Hebdo back then, but today is a different kind of challenge, and I wanted to get your kind of thoughts about it. We've had this President Trump and the administration has put forward this notion of describing or defining, a terrorist as someone who is not just, Antifa, or whatever that is, but also
People who are
someone
anti-fascist, that's what it is.
anti-fascist. I remember.
Sorry, it's not
Yeah.
pejorative. Yeah.
But then there's, that anyone who is anti-Christian, is that right? And it was basically against American values in general. It's very
My
amorphous.
wife used to be a Salvation Army captain. I'm in the clear. So
But don't you think, or do you worry that these things can be weaponized, as so much things are being weaponized, to basically to go after your critics, of which someone like us could be right in the crosshairs?
of course I worry about it. But I also have to say that, my daughter, when he was elected in 24, was, called and needed a handhold, and she said, what do you think's going to happen? And I said, they're going to try to pull some stuff like they're pulling now, but they're so incompetent they won't be able to do it. And I think that's where we're at right now.
Right.
And I think that I'm lightly confident that we're going to come out of this starting this fall. Because, he really does taco, on everything. And I mean, look at the reflecting pool thing. Well, Perot dropped the indictment against the Olympic, whatever he was. And so they get right to the edge. I mean, yes, they've done some terrible things. ICE, killed people in the street, jailed people. They literally have concentration camps now,
Yeah.
and so we're not out of the woods yet. Now, having said that, I think that editorial cartooning is so small now that like we kind of escaped their attention. I think,
Right. Yeah,
you
and I
know.
think, Jack, how they've put the focus on television that he watches, right? So the late night television and that sort of thing. But, you know, put this back 30, 40 years, the politicians were watching like hawks, the editorial cartoonists, particularly for the Washington Post, right? Because they woke up every morning, it was there. And then other syndicated cartoonists like you, Jack, that would be all seen all around the country. And Gary Trudell in those days, you might remember, Doonesbury was this larger than life thing that appeared on over 1,000 newspapers. Everyone was reading it. I suspect if a Donald Trump had appeared then, yes, we would be front and center. But he doesn't look at cartoons. He doesn't even know that that's all out there. So maybe, we wouldn't get the same sort of focus, but there will still be this appetite out there for some people to want it.
As I said, I'm pretty optimistic that we're gonna wake up here because he's gone too far. He's gone too far for his base or those persuadable, conservative independents, let's call them that, where they're like, those are the ones who are voting on the egg prices, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so, we're look, I was in absolute fear during the first term, because you could hear the anger of their voters, where they are like, "We're coming to get you, libtards, so watch out." And like a lot of cartoonists I know had very, sophisticated security systems put in, stuff like that, vigilant, and fingers crossed, but like he just hasn't gone after us. I will say I have a personal experience of seeing Donald Trump actually look at a caricature that I had done of him. And I was at the Gridiron dinner, and periodically me and other cartoonists will do the menu drawing for the
Right,
and he was sitting next to Melania, and he picked up the drawing I had done of him with the president of Gridiron, and he shows it to her and goes like that.
right.
So I think that's the only cartoon he's ever seen. you know, I had heard that he didn't like tolls. That's the only anecdote I've ever heard. But, prior to that, you'd always, we'd even go meet the president from time to time, and he'd have cartoonists into the Oval once in a while. And,
Right.
and, you know, but, that hasn't happened.
Mm,
They just don't care,
mm.
or we're not on their radar.
Yeah, well, also, I think when it comes to presidents is that there's no advantage they can gain by having their picture taken with us, right?
Yeah. Well,
And so
I will. I'm sorry.
yeah.
I was going to say I did have a weird contact. Laurel Loomer followed me on Substack.
Mhm.
And you got 7,500 subscribers. I got some, a 9,500 or something. And you just started. And so Loomer followed me. And I happen, every morning, we'll look at our email, and, you'll say, oh, so and so followed you or subscribed to you. And there's Laurel Loomer. Sometimes I look at those and sometimes I don't.
Right.
And there she was. So I blocked her immediately. But then I thought, I had done stuff specifically about her in 24. So it's like, okay, they're not watching with an asterisk.
Mhm.
Maybe they are. Maybe there's a database. I don't know.
Mm, mm. Yeah, yeah. Interesting, interesting. Well, one of the things that we have learned over our time doing this is that um, you do something critical of people, they will find it, they'll read it, or it'll appear somehow they make this connection. It's one of the both exciting and daunting bits of being in the political cartoon realm, right? Because if you're doing cartoons for, let's say, the New Yorker or other or comic books or comic strips, all these other formats for for cartoons that we do, um, it's not likely that it's going to upset somebody, particularly if they're being targeted. But often the people that we target will see them and respond. Did you have any particular stories of how some politicians have responded to your cartoons?
Oh, yeah. Well, I've had a 48-year career,
Right.
which frightens me, but, there it is.
Mhm.
But I was just thinking that, you and I came in during the print era.
Mm.
So, like, if somebody wanted to be critical of us, they'd have to call us on the phone or they'd have to write a
Right.
letter.
Right.
And it's so much more effort to write a letter than it is to, like, bang out an email to
Yep.
somebody,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
And so, over the years, I've had a lot of funny instances, particularly in Oregon with a lot of the local people. Senator Bob Packwood just died at 93 a couple weeks ago, and he was somebody I was really hammering. And, when he got into trouble for, you know, basically sexually assaulting women by kissing them in his office, and he was drunk and so on. And so, I had lots of weird interactions with him about my work. Senator Hatfield, the funniest one was Senator Hatfield was Senator Packwood's a college professor at Willamette University, you know. And so I remember one time, and they were famously feuding. Hatfield did not hold Senator Packwood in very high regard, and it was very, very well known. And so, you're just sitting there at your desk at the Oregonian, and Senator Hatfield's on the line. He says, "Jack, this is Senator Hatfield.
Mhm.
I just want," and the cartoon was about him and Packwood fighting, and uh, Hatfield says, I have something to criticize your cartoon about. And I'm like scared at that point. I'm in my 20s, probably 30 maybe.
Mhm.
And he says, I don't wear that kind of a tie. Click, you know, hangs up, and I've had, you're just sitting there at your desk back in the day, and one time I pick up the phone and it's Harry Belafonte,
Yeah, right.
and you're like, Harry Belafonte, or one time, hello, Jack. This is Ted Kennedy Jr.
Yeah.
My father's had birthday party. Can you give this cartoon?
Right.
And you just never know. One time, I talked to David Brinkley on the phone one time. Jack, this is David Brinkley. Lisa says to do the cover for campaigns and elections, stuff like that.
Mhm.
And it's surreal that we're sitting in our little bubble.
Mhm.
It. We're at the desk, we're doing our stuff. And then you just send these things out like a paper airplane every day. And,
Mhm.
no reaction. It's just me and the cats here most of the time. And then you get some sort of weird phone call or email from some incredibly famous person wanting the original. I mean, I have to say in California, it's like, oh, I knew Senator Harris. Like,
Right.
I remember one time she came into or into the B, and I was wearing shorts and flip-flops, and she kinda looks at me like this and like, "What the hell is that?" And I said, "Well, my deal was if I won the Pulitzer, I could wear whatever I want, Senator." And she laughed and she said, "Well, maybe try long pants next time when you know I'm coming in." And, I've gotten to know Newsom, and in fact, he was the first person to text me when I was fired. Which is weird, because like these people, they're famous national, international celebrities, and then you just get some little slice of them for 30 seconds, and you just think, "Huh, Gavin Newsom knows who I am." It,
Mhm.
you know, so. I mean, I'm sure I'll remember a billion different interactions with politicians over the years, and I know I'm getting a little too voluble here, but um, they'll occur to me as we're going forward. But those are a couple I really
Yeah,
remember.
sure. Well, one of the things, Jack, I think that I found was unique about the American cartooning scene compared to the British cartooning scene was that, I came from working on national publications in the UK because being the size of the country, not being massive, they would have a dozen papers that are distributed all across the country, and not too many local newspapers like we were used to here. So when I came to Baltimore, realized that there was these little kingdoms all around the country where there was a newspaper, and usually one newspaper per state, but other states like Texas, California had several newspapers per state. And the cartoonists there were the sole satirists in the whole state. And they were the only one, making fun of the politicians and the governor and so on. And so that the local politicians tended to watch the cartoons like hawks, right? I mean, to me, I thought, wow, because I arrived into Baltimore, I didn't know anything about Maryland politics nor or Baltimore politics. And then suddenly you were kind of fully on because everyone was watching what you're doing. And within 2 weeks of arriving, the governor called me, and not even a secretary. I picked it up, was with you, says, "Hi, this is the governor speaking." And, then that became a long and crazy relationship that I had with this politician named William Donald Schaefer. And I see we have several Maryland people who have joined us here. And, he was a kind of a thin guy, not exactly like Donald Trump, but he was, irascible, cantankerous, and, had very high opinion of himself. And so what happened is that, he asked if he could have one of my first cartoons that I did. Maybe it was the first cartoon I've drawn of him or something. And that's always, like you said, Jack, off-putting when the target of your cartoons and wants the original, right? That's kind of an interesting idea. But when he suggested this, I had this arrangement, Jack, and I'm sure you have something like it, where if a politician wants a cartoon, you don't give it to them. You have to do something in exchange, like you give money to some charity or something like that, right? And so when I told this to him, he was furious. And so he hung up the phone. And then from that point onwards, I became like public enemy number 5 or something, where he would carry my cartoons in his pocket and wave them at press conferences and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And one
Well,
morning, I turned on the radio as I got in the car, and it was the governor on the radio talking about me when I was in the car, so I thought that was rather amusing.
yeah, we have. Hi, Kat. You can't be here. That these people are presumptuous. That's why they're in politics.
Right.
I mean, they have. There's something genetically that allows them to be that way. Where they are the center of their own universe. I mean, obviously, you made bank with Schaefer as a character. I mean, he did way more for you, right? In
I should
some
be paying
ways,
him. Yeah.
because yeah, like he's just saying functionally, this guy's very effective,
Mm,
and I'm very angry about that.
right. Right.
As opposed to like, you and I would be like, anything a politician could say about us, we would immediately dismiss, right?
Right. Right.
But if somebody called you up and said, I'm an art professor at the University of Arizona, and I really don't like your cross-hatching technique at all. It's incompetent. Your lettering
Right.
is amateurish,
Right.
and those are like, oh my god, you know. But like, you get a call from Senator Hatfield or whatever, you're like, whatever,
Right. Right.
Um, so yeah, I mean, it's a weird little, I've had these situations, for example, in California, Governor Jerry Brown had a dog, a corgi named
Mm,
Sutter.
mm,
And I don't know who benefited more from me drawing cartoons about Sutter, Governor Brown or me.
right.
But Sutter became kind of a little sensation here, the cartoon. I know the Browns every Sunday, they opened up the bee to see if Sutter was in my cartoon. And I never heard a damn thing from the Browns the whole time they were in office,
Right.
his wife, Ann Gus Brown and Governor Brown. And so right before I was about to fly out to Columbia to get the Pulitzer, I got a call from his press secretary, and he said, "The Browns want to know if you want to come down and say goodbye to Sutter because he's because, he- because he's sick."
Oh, they're gonna put him down, and they wanted
Well,
you to be there.
they wanted me to say goodbye to Sutter,
What?
and that's Jerry Brown, you and I, we just grew up with this guy,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he came into politics when I was probably 14 years old,
right,
at my level of attention.
right.
And to think that like you have some sort of interaction with them. And then a couple years after he left office, they invited me up to their ranch and I spent the afternoon with the Browns and gave him some Sutter originals and, did Latin conjugations with them, literally.
What?
We did. I mean, yeah, no, in fact, this is one of the funniest ones where, Jerry Brown is kind of famously humorless,
Oh, yeah.
and but he's wry though, if you're listening to him. And I think anyway, I said, I had minored in classics at Portland State and studied Latin in high school. And so I said, this is on camera. I think it's on YouTube somewhere, where I said, okay, Governor, we're going to do Latin conjugations. And so I'm going to start off. And, uh, and I said, sum est. And he goes, sumus est sunt, and I go, est it, imus est erunt. He said, I still have my Latin dictionary. And I said, I'm sure you do, Governor, I mean, that's just how surreal this profession can be when you
Mm.
interact with these folks.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Jack, I'm going to interrupt just for a second here to remind folks, because I have a lot of new people who've come on board here, that let us know where you're viewing us from. We've already seen that we've had folks from Vancouver, Washington. Janice had also spent a bunch of time in Portland, Jack, so she knows your stuff. And Ann Telnace has just joined our conversation here. And
Who's that?
anyone,
I don't know this Antelna's person.
yeah,
You ever
that's
heard of her? I don't know.
so, anyone who tell us where you're viewing from, and also your favorite Substacks. And also, I posed this question before, but I'm posing it again. If anybody has more than 20 Substacks that they subscribe to, let us know. You don't have to list them; just give us a number, and we want to know who's got the most Substacks that they support here on on
I
Substack. So,
see Anne just joined us,
yes, so
and
yes,
oh,
we have
I think she's got 100,000 subscribers.
Nan's doing a great job. Well,
She's doing a great job, and God bless her. I told her, I said, congratulations, you're now the president of all the U.S. cartoonists. And she's been been doing a great job representing us.
yes, absolutely.
But also, the thing about Substack is that, you'll see somebody come in as a free subscriber. On my account, I have everybody can subscribe for free. And I just depend on the kindness of strangers. If they want to kick in, I always tell people, I hand them my card and I say, if your net worth is above $2 million, you are going to subscribe paid, you know? But that if one comes in and says subscribes to Jack Ohman and 343 other Substacks, they're not going to be paid subscribers.
Mhm.
But like if somebody comes in and they like follow 4 or 5 people, you might have a look,
Mm. Well, I'm grateful for everyone who's been supporting me. It's just been an absolute, for me, it's been a godsend as well, Jack, because
Me
when I
too.
left the Baltimore Sun over a year ago, um, you lose that income, and it's a big setback. And this has definitely softened the blow. Thank you for all the support of my subscribers here. I really, really appreciate it. Now, Jack, I've noticed you're sitting behind you. There is a very messy table, and that looks like it's possibly your drawing table. Is that correct?
It is. This is the drawing table that I used from 1983 to 2012 at the Oregonian,
Mm.
and I'm going to try to lean this in a little bit. So back in the day, we use push pins. Can you see
Oh
this?
yeah, yeah.
And literally thousands and thousands and thousands of push pins went in there. This is probably a table from the turn of the century. And so I when I left the Oregonian, I took a buyout the first time, and I said, "Can I have the drawing table?"
Mhm.
And they said, "Yeah, for $50."
There you go.
So I bought it,
Yeah,
you know. But I mean, God knows who did how many billion cartoons on this thing and
yeah,
illustrations and so
sure.
on. I inherited it from Art Bimrose, and he'd been there since 47. So it's got provenance.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I noticed you've got a lot of ink on it, of course. One of the things today, one of the great things about our friend Ann Telnace, and somebody has, I think it's Gary, who says that his favorite Substack is Ann Telnace. So there we go. That there's just a handful, a literal handful of people, both in the U.S. and abroad, cartoonists, who are still working pen and ink on paper because so many of, for obvious reasons, have moved over to do digital work. And also, I use digital tools to enhance and help the cartoons, but it's primarily done by hand. Very, 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 very few. Those numbers are getting really small. And so one of the great things about Anne and Jack to me is that your line work, it just feels like it's done by a person, by a human being who's got the thumbprint of a person. When, as we are, quickly being absorbed into this massive digital world of which much satire is being delivered via memes and print some pretty funny and really great memes, but the memes don't have anybody's signature. And they all end up kind of all looking the same in so many ways that there's no distinction. And you wonder what human, if there is a human, is behind it. One of the things that distinguishes what we do is that there's this very direct human connection between what is being created and the people absorbing it. So when we talk about Ann Telnace, people are picturing her drawings, which are unique and have her personal signature, the line and the way it looks. And I think that is, I would like to hope that is going to carry cachet in some way as
we're
we
like
see
we're like
forward.
vinyl.
And yeah, that's right. We're like vinyl.
You know.
That's the best metaphor. Now, Jack, I want a cartoon out of that, man. That's a good one.
Okay. Can I reach out a frame and grab an original here, if you don't
Yeah,
mind?
sure.
Um, and these just happen to be here, but like,
Mm.
this is what they look like. This
Interesting.
is just 8.5 by 12,
Right.
and
Right.
we do them. Cal, I believe, uses a crow quill, if I'm not mistaken. Do you use a brush too, or just?
I use a variety of different pen
Right.
nibs, yeah, and a brush as well. Yeah,
But
for
I'm
sure.
mostly brush.
Mostly brush.
And then, when I do the cross hatching, which would be up here, that's a uniball pen, micro.
Wow. Right.
And then, I letter with literally a Flair pen, Flair brand pen. So we're not real fancy around here.
Well, your lettering, by the way, Jack, is always really good. It's way too professional. Makes me blush when I see your lettering.
You want to know why?
This is cartooning conversation, folks. This
Well,
is what we talk about lettering, right?
Well, but it's important. I mean, this is what we do. My mother was an artist, and when I was like 6 years old, she was hammering me on lettering. Like I had a lettering book when I was
Oh, yeah,
6.
right. Wow, you're 6. That was your 6th birthday
And
present.
that was just like, we didn't go to, cartooning school, but mom was there to make sure that like I knew, how to do serifs,
Wow.
and you know, lettering is really important because like you'll see some really good cartoonists and they haven't gotten the lettering down right. And you kind of like, ugh, poor guy, poor girl,
Well, Jack, I describe it is that the lettering is the tone of voice because people are
Exactly.
reading it and then they're absorbing it and it creates something. And so it's a potential with so much expression. Uh, Pogo was masterful, that strip, because its lettering was so engaging because we have so few tools really to engage people. But if you don't make the best out of the lettering, you're missing a great opportunity. Now, I will also add, it's the bit that I like the least about doing drawing. It
Yeah.
takes me so much time, and it's a lot more work than people think to be able to do it. And I rarely get it first time. I have to do I spend more time cleaning up my lettering than probably doing my caricatures. So, when I was working on tight deadlines at the Baltimore Sun, I remember one of the key things is that when we started inking my cartoons, I'm not sure what order you do it, Jack. I have seen you draw, but I don't remember. But I would write my balloons first. I would do the lettering first because that had to be really good. That had to be tight at the time, and of course everything spelled correctly, which is a big problem for me. And
Well, you
then
went to
start doing the
Harvard,
rest of
I mean, kind of low standards, but you and I started off in the, we'd make a mistake and we would hit it with white paint.
yeah.
Do you do that still?
No, I don't. I scan it
Okay.
and then I clean it up in Photoshop.
And so here's a letter card.
What?
This is uh political buttons from California. I think it was in 2018 or
Okay,
something.
okay.
And so you can see like there's a little mistake on that,
Yep.
right? And so I was like, I'll just clean it up in Photoshop.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
And so
Mhm.
I have pretty clean originals most of the time because,
Yeah,
I want them to look right archivally. Um, but I also know that, I have a lot of cartoons that are just junk because I know that I can fix it in Photoshop or that
yeah.
I'm going to infill. Like if I do some space cartoon or something like that, some astronaut passes or something, you just do the curve of the earth. You go in there with Photoshop, you color all the continents in just with the tools, and then you do
Right.
the sky and there's a tool that makes really cool stars, and you're just like,
Mhm.
you barely drew it.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you're just like, okay, is this going to be old school, draw the ionic columns properly cartoon, or is it I'll fix it in Photoshop cartoon?
Right, right, right,
And
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
just parenthetically, there are quite a number of Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonists who just like Nick Anderson works on Wacom's,
Yes.
Steve Sack does his on an iPad and Procreate.
And they're beautiful. They
And
do
they're
beautiful
beautiful.
work.
Kevin
Yeah.
Sayer, same thing. He did
Yep.
and I was like, how can you do this?
Yeah.
My big fear with that is that I cannot reverse engineer a mistake on time because you and I mean, we worked against the 2 o'clock deadline for decades or 1 o'clock. And you're like, well, I didn't have to reverse engineer that white paint, baby.
Right.
You just hit it with white out and you're good to go.
Mhm.
And I don't even work in layers. I'm so afraid in Photoshop because it's just like, I got to go down to the fourth layer. I mean, I had a book idea that I still have. I penciled out 3 chapters and I talked to my agent about it. He said, "This is great, man. I can get you a 6-figure advance." And he said, "Yeah, but you got to work in layers in Photoshop." And I was like, "Yeah, I don't know." I'm very technophobic still at 66 or whatever. I'll be 66 next month. And I don't know. I just like the ink and brush stuff. It's very tactile. It's art. you know? And I mean, the Photoshop guys, the Procreate guys, they got a bunch of digital files, with all due respect, because Steve Sack, for example, oh, the guy's a master. He can draw anything, any
Mm.
way he wants, anytime. And yet he's just digging it on Procreate. And then he's still able to do work, and he pretty much doesn't have control over one of his hands because he had, something happened to him. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he's still able and also able to do 3D, models, digital, what are they called? 3D printouts or
Yep.
whatever.
Right.
And does these little, sculptures that he just does on his Procreate and then bang, and it prints it. I mean, I just feel like, Alan Shepard in a world of Star Wars.
There you go. Well, so we did get the somebody's name is Tom M, which may be Tom Meyer, who says, I keep asking Jack to try at least one fully digital cartoon. You probably know who that is. I don't know who that is. But listen, folks, we've kept you here for 45 minutes. It's been a lot of fun, but I want to basically turn it over to you and pose us some questions while I've got Jack here. Also, if you have any suggestions from me in regards to my Substack of things you'd like to see, more things like this. I want to try to once a month at least do something special like this for you folks. One of my ideas for the next time is to have a close um, sample of me drawing a cartoon of not from beginning to end, that takes 7 or 8 hours, but at least the key elements of it and be able to display it in front of you and show what the different ways are. Oh, how do you do the cross-hatching, the type of pens you use? I know it sounds terribly technical, but one of the things, Jack, remember where we started where I said, "Well, what would the 20-year-old, Cal ask?" One of the things that I realized when we got to, our particular stage of our careers is that we've accumulated a lot of knowledge and a lot of wisdom. And what you would like to do is share it. You'd really like to share it as much as you can. That's what I love about the Substack is an opportunity. You don't want to, you know, exit this moral coil with leaving all this information inside of you and your personal experience. Share it, and that's what I feel is part of my mission.
You and I both write about our process all the time. Like we'll do a week in review, right?
Mhm.
And it's kind of political, but it's mostly, God, you know,
Mm.
I don't know what I was thinking on that lettering, but oh, I screwed up the perspective on that, or oh, I wish I had looked at a photograph of the Lincoln Memorial before I tried to, to draw it. And
Yeah.
I mean, there's all these little microscopic things, and I think that the people, who are our subscribers, paid or otherwise, they want that process conversation,
Yes.
and so
Yeah.
well, that's probably going to be your highest rated Substack live when you sit there and draw that thing. So
Well,
I've sat next to you. I've watched you draw these things, and I know that Cal probably feels the same way. Man, I love watching guys at the state fair,
yes.
just wherever, but to watch him, I remember watching Jeff McNelly draw a cartoon literally on his lap in Seattle in 1990, and just people were just the cartoonists were just like, "Oh my god, how the hell did you draw that dinosaur?"
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
whatever. It was a dinosaur. So anyway, yeah, the process is really interesting. Anyway, your
Yeah.
callers.
Well, with going back to the drawing and watching other people draw is that everyone draws differently, right? And, Jack, you do a lot of presentations. I've seen you give presentations. I love to stand out in front of a crowd, and one of the elements I do is do some live drawing. You have a big, uh, you know, pad, and you got your big thick marker, and although it would take both of us in an ordinary situation creating a caricature of an individual, it won't take us 30 seconds. My Trump takes me a really long time to do, but I've worked out a distilled 30-second version of Trump, and people love to see it. And you know what? I love to watch other people do it, even though I do it for a living. And you know why, Jack? Because it is complete and total magic. No special effects. You got pigment on paper and you move it in a certain direction. And as people are watching, they don't know where it's going to go. Only one person knows where it's going to go, and that's the artist. And as they do it, and at least I'll speak for myself here, is that I half the time don't know exactly where it's going, but I've got a pretty good idea that if it goes in this direction, it's going to kind of look like the way you want to do it. And when it all comes together, it is like magic that you have this two-dimensional flat surface that's created a life, this kind of energy, particularly caricature, which projects energy. It is just an absolute fascination, and I think it will always be fascinating for me to watch other people draw.
That's why they used to pay us the big bucks.
That's right. Maybe they should just put us in a cage, right,
Yeah.
in the town square and have everybody watch as we go by, and they say,
Well,
"Look at this."
we've both watched each other's shtick 100 times. The
Right.
first time I saw Cal's, I think remember you came out to Portland about 25 years ago,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, yeah.
you did this bit where you taught the entire audience how to draw W, I think it was.
Could have been, yeah.
And like he just does, okay, you draw the two little dots first, and then you
Right,
do
right,
these
right,
curves second, and then you do this, V down here. And everybody was following along. And there's like 200 people in the audience, and they all hold up the drawings. They all look pretty much like what Cal did. And it's very
right.
reductionist, you
Yeah,
know, in a
yeah.
complicated world. It's fun to see somebody who can do something simple and cool.
Yeah. It's also, it connects with people, I say their inner 6-year-old, because everyone at the age of 6 was a cartoonist, right? Everybody's sketching with crayons and stuff like that, right? But then somehow between 6 and 16, it kind of atrophies that part of their brain, right? But the excitement of the creation of of somebody seeing that appear in front of them. You described that. I had a really funny experience with that, Jack, when I was in France, and it was right at the beginning of the Gulf War, where people might remember who think back to that era. France was a big target of the then Bush administration because they were not being as supportive of
Freedom fries.
freedom fries. They would take no longer French fries; they would be called freedom fries. And I remember being
In the House of Representatives cafeteria. That's where that,
right,
started.
right.
Anyway.
It's that kind of stuff. And there was this case, Jack, where I was in Texas at this French restaurant. And I was asking what was it like for them at that time because people were going to the liquor store, they said, buying French wine and pouring it down the drain as if that was punishing anybody, right? That kind of stuff. So anyways, I was at this conference. It was actually it was a cartoon festival of sorts, and it was about America, and in fact, it was talking about the other America, the America that the French people don't hear, because all they were angry at the time at Americans and what they were doing in the world and so on, much like people are feeling now. And so
Are we
I,
still in the world? I didn't think we were, but keep going.
yeah. So I was on this panel, and there was a lot of gnashing of teeth and people pouring a bit of acid upon my position there and being there. And I reminded everyone, I said, I just want to let you know that more people voted against George W. Bush in the same way as with Donald Trump. More people voted against them than live in France. Imagine the entire country of France in the United States. They didn't vote for them. But I did one of these drawing demonstrations. It was, hundreds of people in this giant room, and I taught everybody how to draw George W. Bush. And as part of it, I always asked people to hold it up, and the place, when I asked them to hold it up, the place roared. They were just so excited. And so they got all of their frustration out in paper. I thought that was pretty amazing.
I think to your point, just quickly, there's a cathartic element to what we do. And I
Yes.
think that why we work on Substack in particular is that we're an outlet, that release valve for, I try to post most days, right? And so every day there's like, 4 crimes against the United States and
Yeah.
humanity that these people try to pull.
Right.
And at least you can give them like an 8-second, like, oh,
Yes.
Anne said
Yes.
what I think, or Cal said
Yes.
what I think, or
Right.
you said what I think, and God bless it, or,
Right.
that's good.
Yeah.
We're like mini psychiatrists for these people in some
Right, right,
ways.
right. No, I absolutely agree. I mean, I know that the amount of times that people have said that to me, and that gives me strong motivation as to what we're doing.
I want a friend of ours, David Cohen, is
Oh,
on.
yeah.
And David Cohen is a great cartoonist. He's in Asheville, North Carolina, and he's a drummer. He's just a sweetheart. He's
And
one of my favorite
his
people.
birthday is the same day as my birthday. So there
Oh,
you
is
go.
that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, that guy, he's running Asheville, North Carolina.
Mm,
Like he articulates this local stuff
right.
that like you and I are not seeing it from the outside, but like don't think that Dave Cohen doesn't do some, same cathartic effect for people in Asheville.
Sure.
It's important, and we used to have hundreds of people in these towns and cities, that we were like their cathartic, valve.
Right. Yeah. 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 So there's some still great value, and hence why Substack is great and people are supporting us. I would like to think that as we move ahead in the decade ahead, in this ever changing media landscape, where legacy media, both in print and on television, is waning, or its importance is waning, is that people will be migrating to Substack and maybe other groups like it. But the idea is that it's almost already, you can see kind of networks opening up, and groups of individuals with ideas and ways to be able to articulate them here. And there's also seems to be a lot less, oh, I don't know, of the rotten apples that are coming out and haranguing you. It seems a little bit more civilized conversation so far. But yeah, so I'm incredibly pleased to be a part of it, and I'm so happy to have this team, this group of folks from all over the country, from outside the country, who are viewing us here, Jack, listening what we have to say. Um, you
I'm
know,
a paid subscriber. I can watch this.
that's well, good, 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 good.
Isn't
I
it
challenge
funny?
the next time you draw my caricature, and I'll draw your caricature
Well,
next time.
I'm right. I can do it right now. I got a pen right here. But
Yeah, well, we're running. I think we're kind of well. I don't know. We got 5 minutes. Got 5 minutes. Okay. Can you talk and draw at the same time, Jack?
last time I checked.
All right, here we go. We're going to close out with this. This is going to be really interesting. All right. Now, Jack, it's going to require you coming a little closer to the camera so I can get a really good look of you. And
Yeah, I changed hairstyles on you. It used to be really easy.
yes, I'm going to have a certain angle on Jack here. All right. Now, Jack. Hey, Jack.
Yeah.
When you're drawing, your head is down like this, so I can't see you. So why don't you draw me first, and then I'll draw you. You can get
Okay.
your
I think I can do it this way.
okay. Well, this is going to be a really simple thing then. Okay. Okay.
Normally, we don't draw in zero gravity here, but
All right. All right, Jack. So I've done it in pencil first. So I'm going to quickly do some ink over
of
the
course
top of it.
he's done a study while I'm drawing this upside
No,
down. But
it's
hey,
not even close to a
yeah,
study.
no
It's not even.
problem. Yeah, we've both drawn each other so many times. But anyways, that's all I got.
Okay, bring it tighter. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. You talk while I finish your
Let's
thing
see
out
the
here.
top of your head now.
Oh yeah,
No, let's talk about caricature while you're
yeah,
caricaturing.
sure.
And
Yep.
one of my complaints about uh, my world,
Yes.
my cartooning, is
Right.
that things are happening so fast, and they they'll burp up these politicians and people in the Trump administration. It's almost like you don't have time to do a study. You don't have
No, you don't.
time
Right. Right.
to do a couple weeks worth of honing. I wouldn't even want to look at my Trumps from 2015.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden you can draw them, from memory with your eyes closed, and every little blob and goo and crap dripping off his face. And so, it's a process, right?
Yeah.
And when people are doing paintings, they sit with them and they do all these pencil roughs. And I commissioned Phil Burke to do a painting of Jack Kennedy, and he gave me all the studies, the pencils.
Oh yeah.
And can I just, since you're doing this, is interesting. So I think my living room's clean enough. So here's the painting.
Oh yeah. Nice
It's
one.
unbelievable, and so then he's such a nice guy. And then so he sent me the pencil studies. Look at how big the pencil study is.
So that now give this people some idea of that dimensions of that.
Well, this is I'm going to say 18 or 20, probably 24 by 18.
Okay, so it's a good size.
And there's about 7 of them like this. And
Oh my gosh.
I think I framed half of them,
Right.
and but here's a fun one here too while we're screwing around. This is Frederick Opper.
Oh right. And his time. What was his era? Tr-
Oh,
tr-
around 1900,
Right. Mhm.
in there, if I'm not mistaken. R.I.P. Draper Hill, who could tell us. Neil Grauer, who's still on, I think. If you could type in when Fred Opper was active, Neil. And this is this poor guy trying to get a cartoon idea.
Right.
And we all do that. But I'm just saying, kind of, here's a little Thomas Nast self-portrait if you're interested.
All right. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, $80 on eBay, right?
All right, Jack, are you ready for this?
I am.
Ultra simple Cal cartoon of Jack Ohman holding up.
Oh,
What? Wait a minute. Hold on.
I can't go on living after seeing that.
No, man.
If
I
I
mean,
could
it blocks all the subtlety, but there we go.
Oh my God. And I thought it looked thin.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Hey, guys. Well, look, everyone, this has been so much fun. Jack, we've been exactly an hour. It's been so much fun. We will get you back, particularly if there's kind of interesting, moving stories going on. And I'm sure that, I would really love to talk to you after the cartoonist convention. You'll probably have a lot to say. And it'd be really wonderful if the Substack Live will allow maybe one other person. I think they might be. I'm going to have to look into it more. We could have 3 people on the conversation. And that would be really great to get some of our other colleagues. Or we could do a cross interview with some people not in the cartoon world, which would be quite interesting.
and I'll invite you on mine, and it was always great to talk to you and see you. And we didn't talk about fly fishing once, so,
Right.
that's good for your audience.
Yeah. Just before I go away, Neil Grauer says, yeah, opera was active 1890s to 1930. He was losing his eyesight toward the end, and he said he could no longer didn't see the point of drawing. So everyone, once again, thank you all for coming. This is so great. It's so cool. Really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to my next cartoon that we'll be creating for Substack. Keep your eyes peeled and spread the word. I think that's really important for all of us. The more people that hear about us or join the conversation, enjoy the cartoons, take the cartoons, share them with everybody that you know. And it's so nice. Thank you guys so much. Jack, good to see you, buddy.
Great to see you.
All right. Take care now.